Hello and welcome to Piano Tutorials with Solo Keys at Prime Musicals. My name is Solomon Oshotse, and once again, I'm bringing you lessons. If you are an absolute beginner to the piano or to the keyboard, if you're a music director who is or a singer who is seeking to expand your musicality, your musical intelligence, you're a lover of the piano, a lover of the keyboard, or you gospel keyboardist or an aspiring gospel keyboardist, these lessons are for you. Even if you want to learn the piano at your leisure, these lessons are for you. So please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and hit the notification bell. Turn on your notification bell so you don't miss any content on my channel. All right, so in this lesson we're going to be talking about the subject called intervals. In our in a previous video I talked about the names of the keys. So we've identified the names of all these keys on the keyboard. We said there are 12 keys in the keyboard, 5 blacks and 7 white keys. So you just check in the description section, you'll see the link to the video. You can watch it again and learn from it. So in this lesson we're going to be talking about intervals. So what's interval? Simply put, interval is the distance between one note from another note on the piano or on the keyboard. This applies to any other instrument or music in general. So interval is distance between one note and another note. So when we talk about notes, we're referring to the sound made by each key. So these are called keys. Physically they're called keys. In the guitar you have strings here, but these are called keys. So the sound produced by this, if you can hear it, is what we call a note. It can also be called a pitch, but I'll explain those terms maybe in another video. So the sound produced by each of the keys is called a note. So they all have their different notes and different pitches, whichever way you want to call them. And I'll explain that in a separate video. So you can hear that the sound produced by this key or this note is different from this other one. This one sounds higher than this. So and then distance between this, they are different. So interval has to do with the distance between one note from another note. There are different intervals. There's the simple intervals, there's the compound or complex intervals. But today I'm talking with the simplest form of intervals, the two most basic or fundamental intervals that every musician, every keyboardist, every instrumentalist needs to know. And as a beginner, you need to know these intervals. So the first interval is what we call a semitone or a half step. Semitone or half step. And the second interval is called a whole tone or full tone, or simply called tone or whole step. So the first one, semitone or half step, and the second one is called whole tone or whole step. So what's a semitone or what's a half step? A half step interval is a distance between a note and the note just after it or just before it. It's the interval between a note just after it or just before it. So picking this as C now, for example, if I ask you to move a half step or a semitone away from C, pardon me, what's the next key just after it without skipping? So both the black keys and the white keys are all relevant, equally relevant, so don't skip anyone. So what's the key just after C? It is C sharp. So it means that C and C sharp are semitones apart. It doesn't mean that C sharp is called semitone or C is called semitone. No, it just means that the distance between them is a semitone. So between C and C sharp, it's a semitone. Also, what's the key just before C towards this direction? It is B. This is BC. This is B. So there's no black key in between. So this is B. So it means that B and C are semitones apart or half step apart because they are just neighboring each other. So semitone doesn't mean it must be a black key. What you're concerned about is motion, distance. So for example, now we take this our C sharp. This is C sharp or D flat. A semitone away from C sharp towards the right. What's the next key just after C sharp without skipping anyone? It is D. So C sharp and D are semitones apart, or D and C sharp are semitones apart. So in semitones, you're not skipping any note. You're just moving straight up to the next note after the one you're referencing or before the one you're referencing, depending on the direction you're taking. Once again, this is E. A semitone away from E is F. F is just immediately after E. There's no black note in between. If there was a black note, we would have said the black note is a semitone, but there's none. So F is a semitone away from E. And towards the backward direction, E flat, this is E flat or D sharp, is a semitone away from E because they are just neighboring each other. So that's it about semitones or half step intervals. Now, whole step intervals. A whole step interval is twice a semitone or twice a half step. So two half steps make one whole step. So in a whole step interval, you move to the second note just after or just before the note of reference. So a whole tone or a whole step interval is the interval between a note and the second note just after it or just before it without skipping anyone. So back to our C. This is C. So a whole tone from C is the second note just after it. So 1, 2. So meaning that D is a whole step away from C. So D is not called whole step. D is D. But with respect to C or with reference to C, D is a whole step away from C or a whole tone away from C. So semitone, you just move one step. Whole tone or whole step, you move twice. 1, 2. In the backwards direction, a whole tone away from C would be what? You count twice. 1, 2. This is B flat. So B flat is a whole tone away from C. Now let's pick F. This is F, C, D, E, F. A whole tone away from F, a whole tone from F, count twice. 1, 2. We're not counting the F. F is our reference. So 1, 2. So G, this is G. G is a whole tone away from F or a whole step away from F. In the backward direction from this same F, count twice. 1, 2. So this is E flat or D sharp. So D sharp or E flat is a whole tone away from F. It's a whole tone away from F. So let's pick a random note. This is G sharp or A flat. So a whole tone from G sharp. 1, 2. We're counting twice. 1, 2. This is A sharp. So A sharp is a whole tone away from G sharp. In the backward direction, you count twice. 1, 2, without skipping any note. 1, 2. This is F sharp or G flat. So F sharp or G flat is a whole tone away from this G sharp or A flat. Quick summary. Half step or semitone, two intervals. The first is called half step or semitone interval, and the second one is called a whole tone or a whole step. A semitone or half step, you just move once away from the note you're referencing, and a whole tone you're moving twice, either after or before, depending on the direction that you're going. So it is not the notes that are called intervals, whether semitone or whole tone. It is a distance between one note to another note that we term as semitone or as a whole tone or half step or whole step. So that's it about the basic intervals that you need to learn, the two basic intervals that you must learn as a beginner. If you like this video, if you enjoyed it, if you learned something from it, please like this video, subscribe to this channel, and turn on the notification bell so you keep receiving lessons from me as they come. Thank you. Have a wonderful time.